And everybody knows what's going on in Vallejo. The Vallejo Police Department, the officers are not trained properly, and the ones that are trained properly are not standing up and speaking up against the corrupt officers. The Vallejo Police Department, they do not drug test their officers after they're hired. They're not psychologically evaluated. They're able to just run the streets. And if you need to be drug tested for your forklift job or your letter carrier job, they should be drug tested to be running our streets. They can arrest us, they can put us in jail, they can put drugs on us, and they're human, and they have their own demons. We should be able to hold them accountable when they're taking our loved ones away, when they're racially profiling us, when they're beating us, when they're intimidating us for standing up. We're not going away. Right. They want to silence us, but we're not going away. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and showing support, because I know a lot of you guys have lost loved ones too. And, our loved ones' life is important to us. And, it's a sadness that
$750,000 can go a long way. There are 24 or so federal civil rights lawsuits pending. The city predicts a total liability just for those alone of at least $50 million.
50? You 50?
At least $50 million for those pending lawsuits. Yeah, and that is completely unusual. San Francisco, Oakland. I mean, Oakland's a little different because they're under essentially a negotiated form of federal receivership, which may be coming to Vallejo. Certainly, a lot of Oakland cops have since that happened, but Vallejo is just, it sort of stands alone on settlements, on shootings, on other uses of force. So you fill a lot of potholes with the 16 million or so that's already been spent, which doesn't actually make people whole, right? If you lose your loved one, no amount of money brings them back.
Right. And
so Vallejo just keeps paying settlement after settlement after settlement, often for the same officers. Ryan McMahon, 2 shootings in less than a year.
And there was two settlements came out of both. Well, one is on the way with Willie McCoy, and then they just got hit with the 5.7 from Ronell, right?
Right. Ronell Foster, $5.7 million settlement, which is a large settlement.
That's one of the, if not the biggest so far, right?
It's the biggest in Vallejo. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
it's a very, very large settlement. And the facts that killing are egregious. I have personally watched the video over and over and over again. I've read the official reports. It's
with Ronell, man, there's no way around it, man. That's just like blatant. I just watched the video last night again, and every time I watch it, it's just unbelievable that he got away with that like that, man. So that's crazy.
Well, according to our sources, I mean, we reported this in the badge bending story. Our sources, 2 high-level sources, said that the DA, Krishna Abrams, knew, or at least had been in meetings where the badge bending was discussed as she was considering whether or not to bring charges against Officer McMahon for the killing of Ronell Foster. And ultimately, she didn't. She said there was no crime. But the whole time, our sources tell us she had been briefed on the badge bending. And then Officer McMahon allegedly bent his badge for both.
And that's no surprise to me, because that's the only way the shit makes sense to me. They all got to be in on the shit together. It's what they call that for the RICO Act. So it's a collusion.
So there's actually 2 statutes that are even potentially more on point, and not necessarily specific to any individual, but just the overall situation. 18 U.S. Code 241 and 18 U.S. Code 242, which collectively deal with a conspiracy against civil rights. And that's a federal crime. And the way conspiracy law works is if a group of people agree to a conspiracy, for example, to rob a bank, and then one person in that conspiracy takes a substantial step in furtherance of it, or let's say somebody kills somebody who is not presenting a lethal threat, everybody's liable for that conspiracy. And so that's really, when I, for example, saw the analysis that the officers who've been involved in this, and public officials even, but the officers who've been involved in this, allegedly in this badge bending, could just get away scot-free, and because the administrative statute of limitations had supposedly passed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just fell really flat with me.
Right, they dropped the ball.
Well, but the statute of limitations on murder is, there isn't one.
It's not supposed to be, right?
Yeah, and the statute of limitations on a lot of federal felonies, 7 years probably. So that, I think, is the frame in which to be looking at this stuff,
Right.
at looking at these issues. Not
And then they all working in together, man. It's just like let me just say shout out to the New Yorker, man. They did a good little report, man. And that was some good. They had some good information in there, man. Brought up some things that I didn't know. Between you guys and that New Yorker report, man, I was surprised to find that even with me being in this fight and dealing with the actual impacted families every day, I still hear new shit all the time, man. That's just be like eye-opening, man. So yeah, but I think we got about 15 minutes, Geoff. So just real quick, let me go over some of the stuff we talked about just so I can get everything in perspective. And I'm speaking for me though, because me and you having the discussion as we always do. We could talk forever, but from what I'm collecting is that we got a divide going on within the department. That's what it sounds like. We talked about how, for one, Geoff, he's the one that pretty much handpicked Shawnee Williams, brought him in. Now Shawnee Williams is making moves like we talked about so that he can have more, what you want to call it, more authority or power to hire people or make moves without having to necessarily go through the VPOA or whatever processes normally they would have to do or whatever. So it sounds to me like you got the VPOA, they're against the declaration. So it sounds like Shawnee is trying to get his pieces in place so that he can kind of be able to deal with the VPOA. So it's like a VPOA versus Shawnee and Geoff and his gang. Am I on the, what's up, man?
I mean, it seems like a plausible analysis to me, right? These are power moves, these are power struggles. The VPOA has been very powerful for a long time, in part because almost everybody is in the VPOA. Captains are in the VPOA. Captains. Right. Until recently, captains were the highest rank. You know, your senior captain, of which there were just 3, that was essentially the same as a deputy chief. In what union do you have, the vice president in with the rank and file? So it was literally everybody and then the chief, which makes it really hard to impose any sort of discipline as chief. And at the same time, you're not really well protected as a rank and file employee. I try and say this every time I'm on a podcast or I do an interview. I really believe that there are some good, decent human beings who are trying their best in the system that we currently have. Mm-hmm. But I think that there are some people in the VPD who give a shit and who care about the community, but they are not afforded a whole lot of power. And they kind of have to keep their heads down.
They're getting bullied.
Some of them are, yeah. Yeah. I've definitely heard that. Bullied. I've heard about racial discrimination within the department.
Which even I heard a report that even Shawnee was dealing with a little of that. I don't know if that was because of the racial thing or if that was just because of the VPOA not kind of feeling some of his decisions, but they mentioned that a lot of the officers, it was reported that they made statements that they wouldn't even, they don't listen to him. He's not their real chief, and they don't subscribe necessarily to Shawnee Williams being the chief of police for the department. And
I'll tell you, that is nothing new in this department. I've heard from multiple sources that has been the way that things have gone for a while.
Oh, is it?
He's we should not say that other variables are not in play there. They certainly are. And I think, he's kind of trying to maybe assert more control than some folks in the past have.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it's coming to a head a bit more.
Okay.
But I mean, again, the VPOA posted on Facebook when he was being selected a post basically questioning the value of diversity. This is a city that's has a super majority of Black and brown people. It's roughly speaking, as we know, a quarter white, a quarter Black, a quarter Latinx, quarter Asian Pacific Islander.
Yeah, almost even around the board, right?
Almost even, yeah, and with a substantial indigenous population too. And so it's one of the most diverse cities in the country. Makes sense to have a diverse and inclusive city government, city council, police department. So I think it does matter a lot, but it seems like maybe the VPOA takes different tack.
Right. Okay, and you mentioned about like, for example, the Stingray, the cost of that. 400,000 of that came out of the general fund, right?
Right.
So I'm wondering, being that they got the declaration passed, will that enable them to be able to like go into that general fund to use money for whatever without having to kind of like go get it approved?
It does, I think, free up funds. It sort of streamlines things. The other thing, though, is Measure G failed. That was going to be a sales tax increase, which is a regressive tax that basically just taxes poor people, and that actually failed at the ballot.
Right.
So I think the department and the city and city manager were probably anticipating that money, thinking that it would pass. The city actually put out these glossy mailers that in very small font at the bottom said this for informational purposes only. And now they're not going to have that 0.75% sales tax increase. So I'm not sure what coffers they're going to raid. But the reality is, I think the bigger overarching picture is, we lost our insurance coverage of 31 years a couple of years ago. It was actually the first thing, sort of the first pre-Open Vallejo scoop I ever did. Was I kind of accidentally stumbled across that. Are
they currently insured now?
My understanding is yes, but it's a more expensive, likely much less robust insurance coverage provider, and they could drop us at any point. So when you have 24 pending federal lawsuits and a lot of these have really bad facts. I mean, a lot of these are really terrible situations, and we're starting to see the amounts creep up. Similar conduct that may have been $75,000 a few years ago, those settlements are now, as with Carl Edwards just a couple weeks ago, $750,000.
Right, I've seen that.
And so that, I think, is the biggest threat to the fiscal health of the city of Vallejo, in my opinion, is the civil rights settlement liability and judgment liability. Like, if cops stopped using excessive force in Vallejo, the city would, and again, I want to make clear, money and blood and grief are not equivalent.
Thank you.
They're not equivalent.
Thank you.
But we're getting sort of the worst outcome of all, which is people are dying, people are suffering, people are grieving, and they're heartbroken. And at the same time, the city can't fund municipal services. Essentially, the police department has defunded the city rather than the other way around.
Exactly.
That's sort of how I look at it.
So let me ask you this, settlements, lawsuits, when it comes to those paying out those lawsuits and settlements and whatnot, how much of that is coming out of the department? As far as how much of that is the department actually paying for?
So that money comes out of set-asides from the city as a whole. So that's coming out of the department, that's coming out of public works, parks, roads, after school programs, seniors, libraries, and the department. right?
So these settlements and these liabilities, that's hitting us all the way around. That affects the city all the way around the board.
Direct,
So
yeah,
we're paying
and
for it
directly.
from everywhere, every angle.
Yes, and then the insurers pay the bulk of it to the extent that we continue to have insurance. But
Exactly.
I mean, I want to make this very clear: the civil rights liability has the potential to send Vallejo into a second bankruptcy, is my opinion, and potentially in pretty short order. Particularly when you combine that with COVID-19 and how that's impacted cities and businesses and people's ability to pay taxes and rent. And then you combine it with, so any raise that a high paid city employee gets, that's going to go in, it's going to factor into their retirement, their pension for life. So if you have the city manager or the, Randy Reisner, the former interim and now chief assistant city attorney, if they get a raise, that is not just a raise for the years they're here, but that's also factoring into their, once they retire, the pension liability that Vallejo has to pay as well for life.
Damn. Man, oh, well, I hope having a bankruptcy attorney as a mayor now can help us somehow. But even with that, man, I've been noticing that every time everybody made all this big deal about the mayor. The mayor's changed the Vallejo. We need this mayor, that mayor. But really, how much of the job of the mayor is basically just to facilitate the city council meetings, right? So, I mean, what can the mayor really do? What can we really expect from the mayor? Like I said, he has experience with bankruptcy, but what do you think? What kind of role do you think McConnell could play if that would benefit us, based on what know of him and his experience and stuff?
I mean, you summed it up. Vallejo is a weak mayor city. It is a charter city that has a council manager style of government. So the city manager has all the power. The city manager is in charge of everybody in the city government, except for those working for the city attorney, who is the only other person with kind of their own hierarchy, their own staff.
Who's the city attorney?
Veronica Nebb. She's new. It was Claudia Quintana.
I remember her. I remember
she left under an ethics scandal that we uncovered, and then Randy Reisner was set to be her replacement, but then we published about his ethical challenges being sanctioned by a federal court, so he didn't get the job, and so they.
So you guys have been a thorn in everybody's side.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. We're not here to help McConnell by reporting on Hakeem. We're not here to, we're not here to pick on your street level beat cop unless they're a bad person. We're just trying to report on the big stuff. The matters, hopefully less so of life and death, of fortune and ruin, of the things that really impact everybody. So what can McConnell do? He can set a better tone maybe than has previously happened. He has the power of the gavel, as you said, so he can control those meetings. And it does matter. I think the biggest thing, and again, I just want to make very clear, Open Vallejo is completely nonpartisan.
Right.
So
and
not only are we,
I understand that straight up. You just giving me the breakdown on, because see, the thing that I like about you, Geoff, and what I feel is very important and powerful about us having this discussion is you just made so much sense of a lot of the research I've been doing and me trying to put two and two together, and you know what I'm saying? Like, you come in and you put the puzzles in there and you make everything make sense. You know what I mean? So. And if I'm hopefully, man, that this conversation is something that the viewers can translate and relate to, man, because I think that this conversation and some of the stuff that we covered, if once you start putting all these pieces together, it gives people like me and other organizations a better idea of direction. Where do we need to be targeting? Who are the people we actually need to target to be more effective?
Yeah, and that's our job.
Like
just put that information out there. Yeah, that's all we do, and we try and do it as well as we can. And that was really a fundamental premise of starting Open Vallejo. Was I knew, you could tell that people knew what was going on. They knew that there are things that were wrong. They knew things that were illegal.
Right.
But knowing that and proving that are two different things. And when
and knowing how to address it as well.
Well, yeah, but I mean, people weren't wrong. You know,
Right.
you just gotta. It just takes a lot of legwork to dig up the evidence, especially when people are trying to hide that evidence. And so, this is, sort of I tell outside audiences, it's not that people aren't engaged. It's not that people don't know. The people are actively thwarted and repressed. And at some point, if you're working a 12-hour shift or you're commuting, 3 hours a day to and from the city, or, like my parents did. My mom was an oncology nurse at Kaiser. She's a cancer nurse at Kaiser. My dad was a union guy, worked in the city, and drove to and from. Got up at 4:30 in the morning every day.
It's no fun. It's no fun doing that shit, man. Yeah,
and so you add on not only being lied to and having public records go missing, go off the website, which has happened. Acts of intimidation, cameras pointed at your door.
Right.
That takes a toll. And stuff is illegal, but it still takes work to prove that up. So my role is just to make sure that whatever is happening in the sunlight. So if people want to make bad, people in government want to make bad choices or good choices, whatever their choices are, I can't really control that. But government is supposed to operate in the open.
Exactly.
And so that's what we're doing. That's all we're doing.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, you were pretty much summed up the last words, man. I love how you broke that down, because I really wanted to make sure that got out there. First of all, like you said, that you guys aren't endorsing nobody or none of that, for one. And even like you said about the Hakeem thing, it wasn't a personal attack on that man. You guys wasn't like trying to slander his name or whatever. But at the same time, the truth is the truth. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. You guys was just doing your job. So with that being said, man, before they kick me off of this Zoom, because I'm on the little free thing right now, so I got a little small time.
I had that yesterday too. Yeah.
Let them know, man, what you got going, man, and what you're trying to do, because I see you got a fundraiser or something going that you got going.
Yeah, thank you. So
man,
there's something called.
Let us know how we can support that, man. And
thank you.
What that's about.
Openvallejo.org/donate. Newsmatch is a consortium of basically news nonprofits. We're in this Newsmatch program. So through December 31st, Newsmatch will match any donation up to $5,000, whether it's $5, whether it's $5,000, up to a total right now of $11,500. So they will double people's contributions all the way through December 31st. And the really cool thing is they will double, as I understand it, a monthly donation. They'll just double it as if it was the whole year.
Whoa.
Again, if it's a new donation between now and December 31st. So we're tiny. We barely have any money. I've just been volunteering, paying a lot of costs out of pocket. But we want to build this, and we want to make it sustainable, and then help bring it to other cities so that folks can do similar work in their own communities. So to the extent that folks can, we appreciate it. If you can't, we understand, and we just really appreciate your support. And if you can share our fundraising page, share our work, that's all we ask.
Yeah. And you guys, like you said, if you can, please, man, support Geoff King and Open Vallejo. Let me give a shout out to Brian, Mr. Brian Kranz too, man. I'm gonna be hitting you up later. He's supposed to be helping us on some technical things so we can get our sound and shit a little better. But awesome. Y'all make sure y'all support Open Vallejo. You support Geoff King, man. They is, like he said, man, they grassroots. They just like us and fam, man. We genuinely out here doing this shit because we want to really see some change. It's not about being famous and not about being popular and all that. We real Vallejoans, man. We real Vallejoans, man. We've been here. Like we are Vallejo. We Vallejo, man. You represent what Vallejo is. So we can't keep letting these suckers, represent Vallejo and act like they want to leave Vallejo, man. We got to have some of the real ones get back in the lead of this fight, man, and get the real essence of what Valero and get this, get it back for real, man. Get it back home.